afternoon and welcome to Patterson Field here in beautiful Occidental College in Los Angeles for this Week 11 AUDL matchup between the visiting Vancouver Riptide and your Los Angeles Aviators. Both teams coming in at 3-7, holding on to faint playoff hopes. Both teams going to need to win this game and get some help from the teams in front of them to secure the third and final playoff spot out west. I'm Jeremy Ziskin, alongside me LA Viva player Samantha Pittman. And Samantha, tonight, it's do or die.
It is. The Vancouver Riptide coming off of a tough game against San Diego last night. This is their second game of the weekend. The double game weekends are really hard on the teams. It'll take some great effort and athleticism for them to come up. The Aviators have been playing really well over the last little while. Let's see what happens.
So Samantha, talking about the key players to watch. For the Riptide, player to watch Kevin Underhill. Their captain, their central handler. Look for him to get the disc every other on the offensive line. Also, it's Darren Wu, the under-23 star for Team Canada, ended up winning the matchup against the United States in an upset with a spectacular grab on the final play.
Go Canada.
And will be representing the team on the under-23 championships later this year. For the Aviators, it'll be good to have Eric Lissner, their captain, back on the field tonight.
It will. Eric is just coming off of a broken thumb, actually. He's been out since the Mother's Day game here in Los Angeles. It's a big loss for the team. He's been doing as much as he can. I know that he's really excited to be back on the field, and I'm sure we'll see some great playing from him tonight.
And finally, it's Mr. Steady, Captain Reliable. It's Dan Bellinger.
Dan Bellinger is really the rock for the Aviators. He is someone who consistently makes great decisions, who is always able to move the disc, get it back on defense when necessary, and has really, I think, shown throughout this season, and really excited to see what he's got coming up for us in this game.
We fight!
We fight! We fight! We fight!
Defense down there!
Riptide who?
While the teams get ready to start, I want to take a moment to say that the Aviators are proud to announce a partnership with Select Physical Therapy, the exclusive provider of athletic training services for Aviator home games. Select Physical Therapy is a national leader in sports medicine and rehabilitation, with multiple locations in the Los Angeles area and San Diego, serving the needs of injured workers, weekend warriors, and athletes of all ages.
We'd also like to thank Seamount Industries and TPT, the production truck, for providing production equipment that made this presentation possible.
All right, thank you, Samantha. And the Riptide set to receive the opening pull from Dan Bellinger, and we are underway. And when the pull is out of bounds, they get to take it at the brick mark.
Yes, which in pro is 10 yards as opposed to the 20 yards for a club game.
On the offensive line for the Riptide, it's going to be Kevin Underhill, their rock, their handler, who's going to be centering the disc to start. So the Aviators starting off in what looks like a loose zone, sagging off of the Riptide handlers. A dicey throw on the sideline to start.
Great catch by Kevin Underhill.
And the Riptide successfully get it off the sideline now. Working in a horizontal stack, which means that they have 3 handlers back and 4 receivers upfield looking to get the disc.
Yeah, and we saw some poaching off. One of the players decided that he was not going to be covering his man tight on. He was going to be trying to help downfield instead. Much like we're seeing right now with someone who's staying in the lane of the field as opposed to being tight on one person.
So a couple of spectacular layout attempts already, but no can do. The Riptide punch it in for the first goal of the game, and that's Kevin Underhill with the score.
In an ideal world, offense scores and defense tries to stop them. So they're starting off on a really high point, but we are just at the very beginning of a very long game.
The wind looks to be somewhat mild today. Those Riptide handlers being very calm and patient with the disc. Their throws very buttery. We'll be tracking that wind as the game goes on. It may potentially affect play later on.
Yeah, well, Vancouver also being close to the water, I suspect that these handlers are also somewhat familiar with playing in the wind.
And of course, that was always the main difficulty with nationals. Club nationals used to be in Sarasota, Florida, which is notoriously windy. So Vancouver, playing in those windy conditions up there, that actually turned out to be very helpful for them.
And tougher for Southern California with our nice, still desert air.
Exactly. Makes for great practices, but not so helpful necessarily when you get on the field. So that's a big huck from Eric Lissner. And Elbegen tries to go over the top, but good position by the defender to knock that one away. So it's going back to the Riptide.
And this is a grudge match for LA. They lost on Vancouver's home ground last time they played. Game went into overtime, ended up tied at 24s, and then Vancouver taking it at 27. LA really trying to get this back.
And that is a timeout call by the Riptide. Didn't like the looks of what they were seeing downfield from their cutters, so they take the first time out of the game with 10 minutes left in the first quarter. And we should mention that in the AUDL, as opposed to club, you can sub out any or all of your teammates during a timeout.
Which it appears that we're actually seeing Vancouver having put out presumably their O-line after having gotten the D so that they can march it back down the field. One of the more controversial rules that's different from club ultimate to professional. I've heard some arguments for both sides, but I like to see defense have to play offense. I've got to say, it can lead to some really interesting plays.
This timeout is brought to you by Savage, the ultimate apparel company. Savage is proud to sponsor the Aviators and is the official provider of off-field clothing. Kevin Underhill set to tap the disc in for the Riptide, being subbed in after the timeout.
And big throw, and just bounces right off his hands.
Yeah, it looked like a gust of wind, as we were just talking about, may have pushed that one up at the last moment.
That's got to be really frustrating for Riptide. They just took out that timeout, got their offense all set up, and have it turn over right away. That's a big deal.
So it's Bellinger and Silverman playing the two-man game, and they swing it to the other side of the field. Aviators handlers working it nicely horizontally. Cutter's not quite getting open downfield. And that's Shackner. And he is going to be wide open in the end zone. And that is the first Aviator score. It's 1-1.
Vancouver's coming out looking a little tired, potentially left over from their tough game against San Diego last night. Aviators really looking hungry, really quick movement, really able to get that disc moving more quickly than Riptide so far.
So Zach Shackner with the easy goal, and that's an Aviators hold. You see Husayn Carnegie coming onto the field, and he, Samantha, is explosive.
He is always exceptional to watch. Just his pure athleticism, really great to watch. Coming in, replacing Mitchel Steiner, who threw that goal for Zach Shackner. The Aviators defensive line, they're a force to be reckoned with.
That's right. I think the operative word for them would be gritty. They are constantly laying out, putting their bodies on the line, and they're one of the more spectacular teams, I would say, in the AUDL. Ooh, and it looks like Husayn runs into his own teammate, Zach Theodore. He is down, looks to be shaken up.
As we can see here, when so many bodies are sprinting in such a large area, having someone getting in the line between offense and defense can really be dangerous.
Zach comes off, but he looks to be okay. So the Riptide now back on offense, and that's Underhill running the show. And a big huck from the Riptide. And that's going to be Deed. A very nice get.
Proven defensive force for the Aviators.
The Aviators now looking for their first break of the game. And it's Shackner with the backhand to the end zone, and that's Simon Evans. What a point from him. And Evans an alum from UCLA, one of several players on the team, including Brian Wynn and Captain Mark Elbigan. Teams from all around Southern California well represented on this team. We have quite a Santa Barbara contingent, which historically, Samantha, the LA players and the Santa Barbara players have not necessarily got along so well.
They've not necessarily gotten along. There have been accusations on both sides of attempting to steal players from both cities, trying to put together the best team in Southern California. And, you know, it really looks like it's coming together for the Aviators.
Of course, the Condors, two-time national champion at the club level in the early 2000s, but well represented with Los Angeles players on those squads. And it's been back and forth since then.
Absolutely.
So a big huck from the Riptide coming down in a crowd, and that's a very nice D from Hunter Corbett, one of the young UC Santa Barbara players who has joined the team after the college season.
UC Santa Barbara just having gotten back from college nationals where they did fairly well. They played a tough match at regionals to get there, really earned their spot. And Hunter being critical in that.
Also plays for the U.S. national team. He is a very nice pickup for them as the season moves on. And that's going to be an overthrow on the other side. That was looking for Ian Chiles, but he cannot track that one down. Some nice help coming from the back.
And a huge huck from Riptide.
And that's Rumi Tejpar with his first touch of the game. Silky backhand up the side. Ooh, and a very dangerous late bid. That's going to be a foul. And in the AUDL, Samantha, what happens when we have a foul call?
It's traditionally a 10-yard penalty. However, this close to the end zone, there aren't 10 yards to go, so they get to bring it to the top of the end zone in the middle.
So that's Kevin Lohr marked by big Jacob Ballmer, 6'7", forced to be reckoned with.
He is not someone that I would want guarding me, let me tell you.
It's Riptide in their vertical stack, trying to get something going to the cone, and that's going to be a hammer to the end zone for the Riptide score, and this game is knotted up at 2.
That, I would say, is a fairly risky decision to try to throw over the top, upside down, over someone who is 6'7" and possibly has you outmatched by a good half foot. I don't think anyone was expecting that, given that Jacob was taking away a significant part of that field.
So an aggressive hammer leads to a Riptide hold, and we have 6:28 left in the first quarter.
Really interesting to see how evenly matched these teams seem to be at this point. Both teams able to get some conversions, but not always able to score on that conversion.
So it's Ryan Lee with the pull for the Riptide.
Hometown boy for me. Played Ottawa's Phoenix for a number of years.
That's right, Samantha. You are a proud Canadian.
Sure
we should have
am.
mentioned that earlier. So it's Alan Lai up the sideline, and a big huck goes up. That's Lissner in the area, and he pulls it in for the Aviators hold.
That's got to feel good coming back on the field after such a long break. Get to stretch those legs out and pull one down for the team.
So that metacarpal's feeling pretty good for him.
The thumb is a pretty important part of the ability to catch.
I would say. 6:11 left in the first period. This game shaping up to be another very tight matchup in this stacked Western Division. You know, we have Vancouver, who comes in at 3-7 in last place in the division, but they've beaten the San Jose Spiders and the Seattle Cascades this year. Both they're 1 and 2 in the division, so they are quite a good team.
They've definitely proven that they can hang with the best teams in this league.
You know, the AUDL is expanded rapidly over the years, and this year really has been the most exciting in my opinion. We've added the Southern Division, where we've got Raleigh and Atlanta with their high-flying athletes. It's been a great time so far, and I think the playoffs are going to be even more exciting. It's John Norris. And that's going to be a pick call. It's going to go back to the thrower.
Pick called against Vancouver. 10-yard penalty.
Riptide set up in a vertical stack. which means they are in a straight line down the field. They've got, looks like they have Underhill isolated out in the lane. So the offense mixing it up a little bit this time with Norris. Ooh, and too casual of an attempted catch. Aviators going the other direction. Oh, and that's Silverman who gets it off the deflection for the Aviators break.
He is always one who you want to keep your eyes on as this game progresses. You know that something interesting is going to happen when he's in the area.
Wow, and he just has a knack for being there to clean up the garbage. He's always there.
Yeah, he's really a player with exceptional focus to be able to continue tracking the disc despite potential distractions in the area like a defender. And Vancouver, interestingly, seems to prefer not to have what we call a dump or a reset behind the disc, preferring instead to have them isolated upfield. Traditionally, we have someone behind the disc ready in case of emergency, but Vancouver is opting out of that strategy.
Riptide now on the 30-yard line. Gets it up to the sideline. And that is a big huck for Galitz in the end zone. Beautiful deep run from him for the Riptide hold. That's 3-4.
Big throw to Galitz, the lone American on the team. All the rest hailing from parts of Canada, primarily British Columbia. Galitz from Hanover, New Hampshire.
So we get our look at Stephen Chang. Very steady handler, loves to throw and go. And a smooth, buttery backhand to the end zone. Very nice cut. That's Brian Wynn.
Great to have him back from his trip to Japan. Last home game, he was still away. He's such a pleasure to watch.
Top to bottom, Aviators stacked with explosive athletes. Having Lissner and Wynn back is a big boost for this team as we finish out the year.
Absolutely. Those two players make up a huge part of the LA offensive line.
Now back on defense, the Aviators, good to see Zach Theodore recovering from his injury scare. So he's back out with Shackner, Evans, Carnegie, Silverman, Bellinger, and Chiles. It's Riptide with the center stack. That's going to be Shackner on Underhill. Throwing and going with Norris. Big yards gained by Underhill up the line.
Now, I'm still trying to understand how Vancouver is setting up their offense. They don't seem to be holding to a traditional horizontal or vertical.
A very nice outside in to the break side, but finds its target. That's going to be a Riptide hold, and that's number 72, Mark Ledoux.
Aviators looking like they've got their heads down a little bit after being scored on. We all know that they will bounce back. They have a lot of this game to go, but looks like they're taking this a little personally.
So Mark Ledoux, another of the Furious George Club contingent that has joined the Riptide this year. They formed a partnership before the season, and they are sharing a lot of players. Furious George, of course, known for winning 3 championships in the 2000s, popularizing the horizontal stack throughout the game. Some high-flying, incredible athletes on that team. And Furious, in the last couple of years has decided to move in a more youthful direction. Most of those players have retired, and this team it's a little younger, it's a little smaller, and it's a little faster. Oh, a beautiful juke up line from Lissner. Aviators working very nicely, opening up a lot of space.
They're really managing to stay patient.
And a backhand up the sideline. That's going to get it done. Once again, Lissner with the layout grab, 6-4 Aviators.
I'm sure that that play had flashbacks for him. That's pretty much the same play that broke his thumb last month.
Looks like Lissner hasn't skipped a beat since he's been out. It's been 6 weeks, in the mixed martial arts world or in the boxing world, right? They refer to that as ring rust, right? So when you've been off for that long, you'd think maybe it's helpful for recovery, but when you actually get back in the cage or in the ring, it can be a little tougher to get your conditioning back to where it used to be.
In this sport of ours, there are so much mental game that happens that any kind of time off, unable to participate fully in game situations, can really initially knock you back. It's really interesting to see Eric Lissner upfield so much. You know, we've mentioned that he's traditionally a handler for this team, and to have him score a couple of those goals must be a fun sort of role reversal for him.
So big chunks of yardage gained by the Riptide handlers, and that's going to be overthrown. A very nice help D from Mitchel Steiner, and that's Hunter Corbett, teaming together to get that D. Nice air bounce backhand. It's Audinger working up with Schachner. We get to see Carnegie in space, who throws a big huck. And right at the last second, that is Miles Sinclair, captain of the Riptide, who knocks it away from Simon Evans.
It looked like a good choice until his closing speed brought that down. Husayn mostly known for catching big hucks rather than throwing them, but it was a catchable throw, just a little bit behind.
And again, another throw. That's Mark Leduc with the floating huck, but a very, very nice help D. Again, Ian Chiles and Hunter Corbett in for the D. So Schachner, he is their main D-line handler. Steiner back to Carnegie, but a poach block from Underhill underneath.
And really quick movement by the Vancouver handlers, just getting the disc going. Defenders really struggling to catch up, and they're able to capitalize on that. Unfortunately, yet another turnover.
And there must be something about the wind going in that direction, because that's the third overthrow this point that sails over the receiver's head.
LA starting out not quite ready on offense. Timeout called to give them the opportunity to set something up and perhaps get a little water after this really long point.
We should mention it's pushing triple digits here at Patterson Field, and there is
the valley.
Yes. So we gotta get some lemonade down to the flight deck. Make sure they're not overheating.
This timeout brought to you by Savage, the ultimate apparel company. Savage is proud to sponsor the Aviators and is the official provider of off-field clothing.
So Samantha, the Aviators are doing a great job of getting the D. At this point, they've already had 3 turnovers that they've generated, but downfield, when they're trying to go back the other direction, it's getting a little stagnant.
Yes, we can see that they're able to get the first pass, maybe a second pass completion, but trying to get it any further than half field has not worked out for them well so far this game. Vancouver poaching off a little bit, looking a little bit more zone, taking away the space as opposed to a person.
A nice hammer from Chang over the top to Mark Elbigan, who brings it down with the clap catch. Aviators now in a horizontal stack with their O-line players back on the field after a timeout.
And Vancouver attempting a more zone-style defense, so defensive players looking for the space on the field as opposed to staying tight on one person, which can lead to some really open throws, as we just saw. Really nice movement. LA is always able to find the open person, almost with the D on Vancouver.
The fast break from the Aviators moving upfield. The Riptide now set. That's Wynn to the end zone. That's going to be, and off
Heartbreak.
The hands of his receiver. Elects to go with the shark catch rather than the clap catch and pays the price.
Also known as the claw catch or lobster catch.
Whatever you want to call it.
It didn't work.
That was a turnover. So right at the end of the quarter, the Aviators give up a sure opportunity. Time marching down here. Riptide are going to have to move.
And really great handler movement from the Riptide, able to continually get it off the line. Great handler movement from the Riptide, weaving it back and forth.
And a shot to the end zone. That's Derek Fenton with 3 seconds left in the quarter. Very nice movement from the Riptide to bring it within 1.
LA just having a hard time keeping up. Their O-line, I guess, just not ready to play that much defense on the way down the field. They're going to need some magic to happen if they're going to keep this game close.
And Samantha, we should mention the previous time that these two teams played, there was something eerily similar that happened where the Aviators looked to win the game by 1 at the end, throwing a huck at the very end, trying to run out the clock, but unfortunately left the Riptide with 3 seconds for a last gasp miracle that was caught in the end zone to send the game to overtime. This time on the D-line for the Riptide, we're going to see some players that we normally see on O. We've got Darren Wu and Underhill, Galitz out there. So 3 seconds left in the quarter. So Bellinger takes it on the cone, and he's going to huck it the length of the field. That is not going to have enough distance. Oh, but Theodore macks it forward. And that was an incredible mac, trying to get it to Evans for the goal.
And that was close. I don't think Evans was expecting it. In the AUDL, you can intentionally mac it. Unlike regular or club ultimate, you can't intentionally mac the disc at all, not to yourself and not to anyone else. Not the case in the AUDL. That almost worked out very well.
So an impressive high-flying end to the first quarter. Samantha, what did you see from the Aviators that you liked in that quarter?
I really liked some of the quick handler movement that they were able to get during that zone defense point from the Riptide. They're able to get some huge yards on undercuts. Vancouver clearly trying to force them to make those cuts and not rely on a deep game. LA with a slight lead coming into the second quarter. I'm sure they're hoping to expand that as the game goes on. So feeling a little too close for comfort, I'm sure, with their record with Vancouver.
Up to Lissner and up to Carnegie. Aviators working it nicely upfield. That's Elbigan back to Lissner. UCLA teammates.
Huge infield cut for some really good yards.
Oh, and a layout attempt, and that's Carnegie in the end zone with the spectacular layout grab off of the Mac by a Riptide defender. That is what you're looking for.
I wonder how many of his teammates are going to remind him to catch his Ds.
Wow. Explosive athleticism that we're used to from Carnegie, but haven't yet seen this game. So hello, Husayn, second quarter. This one just got interesting.
Absolutely. Vancouver were able to contain him throughout the first quarter, but that was the opportunity that the Aviators were looking for.
Husayn, this is his third team in the AUDL that he has played for thus far, coming over from the East Coast. He played for the Connecticut Constitution and the New York Empire, and he's getting a master's in fine arts at UC Irvine. Didn't know if he wanted to play this year, but he's back, and once he saw the team that was going to be assembled, back on offense are the Riptide. 11:25 remaining in the half. Oh, and that's a near drop by John Norris.
That wind, I think, is becoming a significant factor.
Yeah, this stadium in somewhat of a bowl, creating a swirling wind.
Vancouver really focuses on getting it up the line for all of their throws. They tend to stay quite close to their home sideline until a beautiful shot down the middle opens up.
So an incisive forehand from Norris leads to the break mark throw, and that is a goal by number 72, Mark Leduc, and he, Samantha, is getting involved early in this one.
Absolutely, and you can see the disc bouncing around a little in the air. That's going to make it harder to read and some potentially dicey throws and dicey catches, as we nearly saw on this point.
The Riptide doing a very good job creating space for both their handlers and their cutters. You know, you've got the AUDL field, which is wider than a normal club field, right? So it's 80 yards long instead of 70. It's 53 and a half, I believe, yards wide as opposed to the traditional 40. And so the Riptide really using every inch of that space.
With this wider field, trying to get it all the way across to both sidelines, you're almost looking at a huck.
And a huck is what we see from Chang, but that one's drifting out of bounds. Very nice help D from Alex Davis, the captain of the Riptide. So the Riptide are going to look to break to tie the game.
Aviators, I'm sure, wanting to keep the disc down here, get this D early before Vancouver is able to get some more of those yards upfield. Almost.
And that is a nice defensive look from the Aviators, sandwiching the dump cutters. They induce a throwaway, and they are on the doorstep.
And some really nice patience being seen here. They're not trying to force it in and score really quickly.
And a very nice scuba that bounces right off the hands of Elbegen. That is unfortunate.
That's got to have been at stall 6 3/4. I think that was a bit of a Hail Mary. You could see him there looking to his fellow handlers with a bit of a "what are you still doing here" kind of look on his face.
And you know, Samantha, that's what Lissner gives you. Even though it was not caught in the end zone, his arsenal of throws really opens the field up for the Aviators, and it allows the cutters to get even more creative in what they do downfield.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that throw was in the hands of the Aviators player.
And so that's a huck to the end zone. That's going to sail long. It's Carnegie getting up and over Connor McFadyen.
Carnegie doing what he does best, getting up and getting Ds.
So he is putting his stamp on the game with his athleticism. That spring is in his step despite the heat out here at Patterson Field. Chang finding his dump. That's Boyd. The Aviators replete with lefties.
Grant being a very capable one at that. It's always nice to have a lefty on your team. And why not have several?
That's lie up to Husayn. Husayn with another huck, this time on the backhand side for Elbegen. And that is going to be D'd very nicely by Alex Davis. Alex Davis, a very smart defender, captain of 3 Canadian teams, this one, Furious George, and the national team. So he is well-traveled, a savvy veteran, and is taking the tough matchup with Elbegen.
Crafty is definitely the word that I would use for him there. You could see him hanging out a little bit behind his defender, tempting that throw. Baiting that throw is another term for that, and really was able to close the space between the two of them to get that D.
So after some tough turnovers on both sides, we're going to get a timeout, and the Riptide are going to look to punch in this break and tie the game up with 7:38 left to go in the half. I'd like to remind you that this timeout is brought to you by Savage, the ultimate apparel company. Savage is proud to sponsor the Aviators and is the official provider of off-field clothing.
The second time this game we've seen a timeout with a full line change on both teams.
And Samantha, you know, with the heat out there, the substitution policy really helps the players,
yeah,
right?
I can imagine both teams are very happy to have that rule in this kind of game. Vancouver probably less familiar with playing in this kind of dead heat that we have in LA. Not to say that it makes it easier for the players who play here, but something to be said for being somewhat accustomed to it.
Back on offense are the Riptide with a deep stack, giving a lot of space for their handlers to work it around. Immediate upline cut. A very nice fake into the backfield and upline for the Riptide. And you can see, Samantha, the pivots from the Riptide handlers, they almost pivot backwards when they're getting those breaks off, and it really clears up a lot of space.
Yeah, if you're comfortable pivoting a little bit further back, you're able to get in the way of where the marker wants to take away that space and give yourself the whole half of that field to work with.
So the Riptide showing some impressive hip action, but a turf, and it's going the other way. Ooh.
Nice help on that defense to try to stop that immediate block. Unfortunately for Riptide, Simon Evans was there to get that huck when it went off.
So the help D on the initial backhand huck look leads to a looping forehand to the end zone. Simon Evans, a strong presence in the air and with his speed, and that is going to be an Aviators hold.
Always exciting to see the hometown boys able to pull it out.
Back on offense are the Riptide, and that's big Jacob Balmer with the mark.
He is such an intimidating presence. And Stefan Carlisle out there as well. Haven't seen as much of him this season. He has been injured. Played Renegade last year in 7 figures co-ed here in LA the year before. It's great to see him back out there and running, shutting down his man upfield.
A throw and go between Norris and Underhill, and that is a nice up-line air bounce using the wind very effectively to get to Connor McFadden.
The Vancouver boys preferring the longer shag hair, it seems.
Well, Samantha, while the rest of us are in a drought, Vancouver seems to be getting a nice amount of rain, so you got to keep that hair long. That's the look in the Northwest.
Yes, got to keep it warm.
Being a Seattle native myself,
You would know.
long hair, beards, flannel, that's what we do up there. Disc centered to Chang, and now to Lai up to Carnegie. Carnegie wants the huck, although he's 0 for 2 so far. You can tell he's a little more hesitant now.
Whether by choice or by instruction, we won't know.
But here's a huck, and that one is going to get the job done. Thank you, Carnegie, for not listening to me. And that is a very nice catch. It's Nick Alexander with the score, another midseason pickup from UCLA.
And he is fast. You could see him turn on the jets to run that throw down.
This depth being absolutely crucial as we head into the home stretch of the season. Following this, the Aviators have a series of 3 matchups with the San Diego Growlers, which could go a long way towards determining a playoff berth.
Absolutely. And a fantastic catch by Riptide.
Yeah, that's Kevin Underhill again. You're going to be hearing his name a lot. That is a really nice throw from John Morris. Puts a nice edge on that one, gives it a slight air bounce. The wind carries it to his receiver, Joel Bellavance.
You're really seeing the teams get accustomed to the wind that's up here at Patterson today. Fewer overthrows, fewer underthrows and turfs, and really much more putting a throw up into space where the wind can do the work for you.
The Aviators back on offense now, and we should note that one of their key handlers is out with an injury today. That's Joe Forbes. And Joe Forbes, a guy with a cannon for a forehand, and he's really been a steady presence on that O-line, so they miss him dearly today.
Knowing Joe, this wind is one of his favorite things, able to put it up into space.
And a very nice D. Chang hangs that one up a little too much for his receiver. Lissner was in the area, but can't come down with it.
And it looks like an injury call on the field.
And that's unfortunate. That's Lissner coming off the field. And it does not look this time like it's his thumb. It looks like he's walking a bit gingerly off the field. Hopefully he'll be okay.
Yeah, it looks mostly like it was some rough contact with the ground and maybe just a little bit of a spine knock to the ground as opposed to anything too serious.
Now the Riptide on offense. Another opportunity to break to tie this one up. A big huck. Brett Anderson with the grab. He's got a receiver. And a nice catch. And that's Underhill with the emphatic edge down spike for the break and the tie score. It's 9-9.
Aviators playing really tight defense on that whole point. Despite that, Vancouver's really able to break away and just force some really tight throws with LA right on their hip that whole time. A really nice peel off and help from the Aviators defense. It looked like he was supposed to be guarding the person with the disc, but immediately took off to try to cover that man that was streaking downfield, and unfortunately just couldn't quite get there.
So ladies and gentlemen, we have a tie ball game. High arcing pole lands just inbounds. Disc is centered to Ottinger.
If I had to be on offense, I've got to say Dan Ottinger is one of the people that I would always want with me. You can see just by the way that he moves that no matter where he goes, he is a target and he is a threat, whether it's with the disc in his hands or getting ready to catch.
Aviators working with 3 handlers and 4 cutters downfield. And the Riptide, Samantha, it looks like they've got a zone working here on this point. The Aviators break through the cup, and they are marching downfield, but the Riptide get it set back up again. That's a wide open Chiles.
And Aviators really moving the disc well. An unfortunate and uncharacteristic turnover from Dan Ottinger, breaking up otherwise really, really great offensive movement, and I mean almost like target practice for the Aviators.
The Riptide, another spectacular grab. Oh, and a sideways layout, a body check right into the side. That's Corbett with the truck. And this does not look good. Now, Samantha, in the AUDL, the referees have the option of giving a player a red armband for what they perceive to be dangerous or unsportsmanlike play.
From this perspective, it looked like both of them were going for otherwise unoccupied space with an unfortunate result. It looks more like that happened on the landing as opposed to from the body contact.
Yikes, and that's their captain, Alex Davis, and that is a big loss. He is not able to put any weight on that ankle, so that's either an ankle or a knee, but that is unfortunate for the Riptide, losing their captain and leader.
And it looks like it will be called as a foul, with the Riptide getting the disc back as well as a 10-yard advantage.
The upline cut is thwarted, and the Riptide are moving backwards, hammer, dump.
LA playing really tight defense. They're Riptide being forced to make lots of throws toward their end zone. Unfortunately, that Vancouver patience is really paying off.
And an emphatic kick spike for the Riptide. They go up another break, and that is 10-9. You got to think that kick spike was sending a bit of a message to the Aviators saying, we're not going to back down here.
One of the things that you see from the Vancouver Riptide is this really, really aggressive upline cutting. It is clearly their first look when their handlers have the disc, especially in a sideline situation. They're really looking for that handler moving upfield, coming toward the sideline. It doesn't necessarily break up the space on the field, but it can often lead to the kind of movement that you see where the defense just ends up too far behind and then able to make a quick pass to the end zone.
Still middle, still middle. This side, this side, this side.
And Vancouver still with the suffocating man D that the Aviators have not yet been able to break down effectively.
Ooh, and a nice diving grab from Wynn. That was a suspect hammer from Elbigan, and he gets the disc back. So that's all Wynn on that point for the Aviators hold.
And I always appreciate being proven wrong in that kind of a sense when the home team is able to break through that defense to pull out a score, especially with such a great catch from Brian Wynn. It's really great to have him back on the field.
Elbigan's aggressiveness pays off, and it'll be interesting to see, Samantha, as we go forward in this game, the loss of Alex Davis to what looks like a pretty serious injury. He was thwarting Elbigan pretty well so far in this game. It remains to be seen if Elbigan is going to go off now in the rest of the game with a different defender.
Yeah, we'll see if anyone else is able to keep up.
With 2:08 remaining in the half, plenty of time for a couple of more scores in this one. Flood play to one side, gets the disc in the hands of Galitz.
And burned on that upline cut. That was a great fake and upline.
Riptide playing a plinko game, getting the disc out of their hands within 1 or 2 seconds. Now back into a more traditional look. Very nice, aggressive dump cutting, but even better defense from the Aviators.
Yeah, hard to stop those over the tops. You don't always expect them in this wind.
So Bellinger is doing work on this point. Big fake and a dish into the backfield. Bodies flying everywhere and a very nice around backhand.
Yep.
Riptide on the doorstep.
And
Cut off by Steiner. And that is fantastic defense from the Aviators, grinding very hard that entire point, and they get the turn right on the end zone.
no matter whether you're playing man-on-man defense, it's still a team. You still are working together, and it's the accumulation of those close calls that really make it happen.
But Schachner gives the disc right back.
A great run-through D from Vancouver. Both teams really grinding it out through these long points. We've seen more than a couple so far this game.
And a help deep from the back from Silverman
There it is.
caused his receiver to think twice and misread the disc. He's going to call a timeout with 17 seconds left in the half, and we might see another line change here to try to punch in this score before halftime.
It must be very disappointing for Riptide to get that huge D and then not be able to convert on that play.
It's frustrating. You work so hard, you grind on the handlers, and you get that D, and then that first throw.
Sometimes you end up a little too amped up after making a fantastic play like getting that run-through D to be able to follow through to seal the deal.
This timeout is brought to you by Savage, the ultimate apparel company. Savage is proud to sponsor the Aviators and is the official provider of off-field clothing.
LA setting up a very, very spread out horizontal stack. The players a good 20 yards or more upfield, and able to create some beautiful space for the handlers to work.
Yeah, Chang gets that one going with the nice inside out, and that's Lissner with the huck. And that one is going to be a field goal and land right near the high jump pit. So 1 second left in the game. If Vancouver is going to punch this in, they're going to need to throw the disc 80 yards. And
We've seen it before.
we have seen it before. We'll see if Galitz has the strength to fight through this wind. It's going to be nearly impossible with both Elbigan and Balmer. Oh my goodness. Shades of the earlier matchup
Yep.
where the Aviators overplay their hand a little bit, and if there was a Riptide receiver behind them, that would have been a simple clap catch.
Yes, a sigh of relief from the Aviators.
After one half of action here at Patterson Field, it's Riptide 10, Aviators 10, and Samantha, what did you see in that first half from the Aviators that's going to need to be improved on moving forward?
Well, starting specifically with their defense, Vancouver has been able to break the mark consistently, to be able to get their resets off, to be able to use that full width of the field. You know, even having characters like Jacob Balmer on the mark haven't seemed to shut them down. So Aviators really got to keep grinding. That's something that the Aviators are known for, and they're going to have to keep pulling that out.
Back to the action down on the field as we are set to start the third quarter. It's all knotted up at 10s, and it's going to be the Riptide looking to go up by 1.
I mean, in this game so far, we've seen some great defense, but we've also seen really good possession offense, able to march the disc down the field. LA playing a little bit looser, more of a zone style defense. I don't know that it's working for them.
Very
Ooh,
nice catch. That is going to be very nice catch from number 11, Darren Wu, and he is shaken up.
I suspect he left almost all of the skin of his forearm on the field. That turf burn is a real danger. And with the amount of skin that he had on the ground to make that catch, I suspect that's going to hurt.
Walking off the field, but that's the kind of play we're expecting from him. So after a relatively quiet first half, Wu comes alive right at the beginning of the second.
It's true. We really haven't seen him to this point. Clearly they've been saving him as a secret weapon for coming out this second half. Hopefully he'll be able to come back in for them now that they've broken the seal on the box and put him in this game.
And Samantha, how do you feel about the Aviators starting a half with a loose zone like that?
It's good to change things up. I don't know that that's something that's going to be effective given the really strong handler movement that we've seen from Vancouver so far.
And Lissner is firing on all cylinders tonight with a very nice deep shot to Carnegie.
They must be so happy to have Eric Lissner back on the field, able to put those shots out to space.
And one thing that's so great about Lissner as a handler is that he's very tall, and so those hucks, he's able to really get around his mark nicely.
And typically speaking, you have a high point of release so that that huck can hang and really travel far. An unfortunate miscommunication from Vancouver leading to a turnover.
And we see what the double team can do. The AUDL, unlike the club game, you're able to have more than one defender within 3 feet. And that is a very nice toe in the back by Mitchel. Steiner in the emphatic goalpost spike. Wow, I did not know he had those kind of ups, Samantha.
He does. He saves them for the special occasions.
You know, unlike the so-called no fun league where you're not allowed to do that anymore, here in the AUDL we encourage that kind of celebratory behavior.
Steiner having been known for a much more subtle sort of end zone spike from his time on the East Coast. It's fun to see him stepping up his spike game.
Putting on a show here for the folks in the flight deck. So it's LA by 1, 10:37 left in the third quarter.
And we've really seen some monster pulls in this game from end zone to end zone, totaling over 80 yards.
And a beautiful outside in shot to the end zone. Ottinger is upset with himself that he didn't get that, but that is a great score for the Riptide, and they've tied it up at 12s. Brett Anderson with the goal. Riptide spreading the love around nicely this evening.
Again, another example of those really tight choices that Vancouver has been making. Dan was not far off that player and was really in a position to make that play, and Vancouver just able to squeak it through.
You get the feeling that if he left his feet, he may have come up with that layout D.
I suspect that might be part of that frustration that we saw him shaking out on the sideline there.
And we're going to see Rumi Tejpar this time with the pull.
Seeing these teams play each other again, the game is still very, very tight. We saw that in Vancouver, and we're seeing that here in LA. Husayn with a huge save coming up that sideline.
And Nick Alexander streaking to the end zone, and that is a very nice grab from him. Turning on the Jets, the young buck from UCLA gets it done. This is a very nice play that we're seeing, very diverse play from Husayn, who is normally a guy that's going to be catching it in the end zone, but they're giving him, Samantha, a lot of room to catch the disc underneath because they're worried about his deep game, and he has so far burned them deep a few times with his throws.
And by letting him have the under, you're also letting him put those throws up. And now that the LA Aviators have Nick Alexander on the field to be able to pull those down, you're going to have to start making some tougher decisions when it comes to covering Husayn again.
And what I've noticed is that they're giving him so much space that they're not getting a very tight mark on. So a guy like Husayn, who's not normally known for his throws, with a tighter mark, you may make him think a little bit more. He may have to put a little bit more blade on it. And with this kind of wind, they might get some more turnovers. Wow! And a spectacular layout D from Simon Evans, flawlessly going through his receiver, and that is going the other way. Big huck from Bellinger. Oh my goodness! Jeff Silverman with the catch over his shoulder and throws the goal to Chiles. I should say almost throws the goal to Chiles, gets it to Corbett. Oh my word, what did we just see?
I don't even know what he did with his body there.
So let's take a look at the replay there. He sees the disc going over his shoulder, jumps backwards and up, and stabs the disc out of mid-air. I have never seen a catch like that before.
That has got to be a play of the week. That was an unbelievable catch. He knew that if he waited any second at all, that disc was going to fly right past him, and was able to contort himself in such a way as to be able to catch it. Wow, that's got to be real fuel to the fire for the Aviators, putting them up to the biggest lead that we've seen in this game so far. Seeing your teammate make that kind of a play can be real motivation for a team to keep stepping up their game.
Now Silverman getting the fans in the flight deck out of their seats, but it's the Riptide trying to keep it close, bring it back to within one. Aviators with a 3-person wall sagging off of the handlers, slowing this game down a bit. Nice blade to Rumi Tejpar.
Some very, very physical defense upfield from Zach Schachner.
And now the Aviators out of their zone defense into a man. Another beautiful upline cut. And the run through D from the Aviators, and he is streaking deep, but they can't get it to him. So it's Ottinger going the other way, and the Aviators are fired up after that last point.
Brian Winback handling.
Middle, it's middle.
We have an injury on the field, arm or a wrist, and that might be Darren Wu.
2 big injuries.
Oh, and he looks to be in some serious pain. That is, in fact, Darren Wu, and that is a big loss for them if he is seriously hurt. Yikes. So the run-through D attempt may have gotten his wrist caught on the man he was guarding. Those are 2 big losses for the Riptide tonight.
Huge.
Already losing their captain, Alex Davis, and now losing their young star, Darren Wu, here in the second half.
It's always hard to keep playing after those kinds of injuries, both for offense and defense. This is a game that is so much about spirit and sportsmanship, recognizing when your opponent does something well, or recognizing when a teammate or an opponent has fallen. It can be really tough to come back from mentally.
Now Wu walking off under his own power, and he's not holding that wrist, so that's a good sign for the team.
Hopefully.
Middle, middle, middle. Still middle.
Back to the action with Chang handling now with Dan Ottinger with the back pivot.
No round, Rumi, no round.
And it's a
Huge.
speculative hammer. That's going to be Deed. Looking for McDougal.
The Aviators once again getting trapped fairly far upfield and getting a little stagnant on their offense.
Nice. Again, around now.
Once again, that patient handler movement from Vancouver, really able to just keep that disc moving and make space for their cutters upfield.
So dumping and swinging. About 4 yards outside now. Looking for Tejpar, can't get it to him. It's Ryan Lee.
What a bid.
Schachner almost gets there, and Chang can't catch up to Galitz. So that is another Riptide goal, and they bring it within one. So what does it do mentally, Samantha, to a team? You know, the Aviators, more than most teams that I've seen in the AUDL, their D-line just lays out constantly. Now, is that kind of energy infectious for the rest of the team?
You can only imagine that seeing your teammates putting everything onto the field, putting all of their energy into trying to make that play has got to be good motivation for the team to keep working hard together. The challenge with that, and I think this is something that the Aviators have seen as well, the constant laying out can mean that you're putting yourself out of position, which is, I think, where in this game in particular, Vancouver is able to have gotten those break throws off because the mark or the potential mark is on the ground after having made a bid attempt.
That's another huck from Carnegie. He's very ambitious tonight, looking for the big man Eric Lissner, can't connect.
An unfortunate turnover out of the hands of Vancouver Riptide.
Oh, and right back at you, says Kevin Underhill.
It's always nice to know that your teammate has your back to get that D for you.
That's a heads-up, quick play from him. Very fast reflexes. This is a fun matchup to watch. Lissner on Underhill.
I mean, it's a smart choice to put handler on handler. You have a pretty good idea of how your opponent is going to move. It's interesting to see that they're so well matched speed-wise as well.
Nothing easy, Rock. Nothing easy for him, Rock. Cut, Brett. Nice job, Rock.
So Win with a nice D, blocking the break mark throw. Scuba to space. And that's Richie Tam with the disc. Timeout Vancouver as they have the disc on the 50-yard line.
And the scuba, the little brother to the hammer, another upside down throw that is not common to see in the wind, but if you can throw it right, it's a very handy throw to have for those tight situations.
Yeah, it looked like the stall count was getting pretty high, and he didn't maybe have enough time to set up the forehand or the backhand. He kind of just decided to flip it out to space. Looked like the other defender was poaching a little bit as his receiver was in the area, so he had to get it over him.
Exactly, and in those kinds of high stall count situations, you typically see a really big throw as far down the field as you can possibly muster. It looked like LA had that space covered, so being able to quickly put something catchable out to your handler is envied.
And this timeout is brought to you by Savage, the ultimate apparel company. Savage is proud to sponsor the Aviators and is the official provider of off-field clothing. 5:21 left to play in the third quarter as the Riptide have it midfield, trying to tie this one up.
And looking like they're really setting up for, but an unexpected drop in the middle there.
That's Joel Bellavance right off the bat, dropping it. And right back in the opposite direction. Easy does it for Simon Evans. That is a quick strike and not what you want out of a timeout from Vancouver.
That was a beautiful throw and really heads-up play to get that to a big thrower and have Simon heading straight for the end zone.
Man, that has got to be frustrating. You call a timeout.
That's the second time that's happened to Vancouver tonight.
You know, sometimes you see this happen when a player catches a huck and they're a few yards short of the goal line. There's always a question in style and tactics. Do you want to call that timeout and set up a play, or do you want to keep the momentum? I think in this case, unfortunately, maybe they should have just kept going.
And another scuba from Vancouver. They really like that throw.
Yeah, Kirk Savage, longtime Vancouver player for Furious George, well known for his scuba. I'm sure that those lessons have trickled down to the youngins over the years.
Quite likely.
I got him.
And a foul on the mark, that is the hazard of the double team. And a huge D from LA Aviators.
That is Dan Bellinger with a very nice goal-saving layout. He took a really nice angle to that disc. It was a tight window that the disc went up to, and he exploded to it.
He did. The Vancouver player really ended up going, I think, maybe a little too far away from the disc on his cut, trying to gain too many yards upfield, and gave Dan an amazing opportunity that he just capitalized on.
Now here's where the Aviators have struggled slightly in this game, going the full length of the field. And this one's coming back, so the Aviators now have to work halfway within their end zone, and they're looking to be in trouble here.
Oh, able to find some space in the middle, get that disc moving. That's a terrifying position to be in, that far back in your end zone.
Steiner gets the disc in power position. That's McDougal. Very close to coming up with that disc.
Now, Aviators struggling to catch up on defense. It's tough when those big throws go up.
A huck in the opposite direction sails over the head of Mark Leduc, and Silverman makes the correct read.
Schachner looking to get the disc moving right away, but just not there.
Huge hucks in both directions. And a skying grab from Connor McFadden. That's 3 hucks in a row. I don't know if this is fatigue setting in, if this is the wind. What are we seeing here?
I would suspect that this is closer to fatigue. We've seen those big hucks in both directions. There have been so many grinding points. It's easy to sort of rest back on those big throws.
So a huck goes up, and Vancouver is now on the goal line. Very nice hammer. But he throws it right back to the Aviators. Dan Bellinger has seen enough of that point. He calls a timeout, and I think we're going to see a fresh 7 out there.
This timeout brought to you by Savage, the ultimate apparel company. Savage is proud to sponsor the Aviators and is the official provider of off-field clothing.
It really becomes a mental game when you're that fatigued. You know, we're late in the season, we're late in the third quarter of this one, it's been back and forth. You really have to have the mental fortitude to still make the correct decision, to step out on all your throws and make the technically sound choice.
13 and 15, this is, I think, an uncharacteristically low-scoring game for both of these teams. They've often seen points reaching up into the high 20s.
Back on offense as the Aviators swinging the disc. That's Elbigan in space. A rather quiet game for him. It's really Lissner that's running the show.
Vancouver's had some really great matchups on Elbigan. That must have been a strategy coming into this game.
A huck from Alexander, and that is Wynn with the leaping grab. And the Aviators now with their biggest lead of the game, up 16-13.
It's impressive to see Alexander with that throw. That's not something that we've seen from him this game. We've mostly been seeing him running down those kinds of throws.
And the young fella is putting his stamp on this game.
About 14 more minutes.
2 minutes left in the third quarter, and the Riptide need to stop the bleeding. Nice inside break, and a break mark huck that comes down beautifully for his receiver. That's going to be Connor McFadden again, and he is having himself quite a game. And that's, you know, Samantha, that's what happens. You get that initial break right off the disc being checked in. You get that one break, and then it opens up the entire break side, the entire rest of the field to do whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, you saw the mark there trying to jump over to block that throw, but it was a great backhand out to space, and that's what happens when that initial break, the defense ends up out of position and the whole field opens up.
And you can tell these guys have been teammates for a while. The chemistry was impressive on that point. Double team goes on to little effect.
Woo.
Layout D attempt. Elbigan with the grab back to Chang. Throwing and going. You see he just opens up so much room with that penetration move.
Able to toe the line, keep that inbounds. That line awareness is something that we've seen to be quite critical in this game a couple of times.
Somebody's got to be. No break!
Wow.
There it is again.
That is the man, Sean McDougall, with another beautiful layout, entirely unawkward, as we saw with our last broadcast. He seems to just come to his feet like nothing happened.
True, the advantage of youth.
How do I make my layouts that pretty?
Time machine.
Another three-man wall from the Aviators. Very loose, forcing the Riptide to make more throws perhaps than they're comfortable with.
And you're really seeing the Vancouver cutters slow down. They've been grinding it out for all of these points. It's where a smaller roster can really get to you in this heat.
We have a stall violation. You only have 7 seconds to throw that disc. It was a nice blade that was D'd anyway, but he could not get the disc off in time. The Aviators nearly with a stall of their own, but Silverman reverses the field. Ooh, and that's Chiles with the layout, but can't get it. Good double team from Evans, forces an errant throw. And this one is a hospital pass. Ooh.
And that's great pressure from the Aviators, forcing Riptide to go up early.
So the Aviators can't get it back the other direction. This quarter ends with a 17-14 margin. And Samantha, we saw a lot of really exciting hucks in that quarter.
Absolutely. I think, as we've mentioned, the fatigue a little bit becoming a factor for both teams, putting that disc up into space a little more often. But contrary to last half, they really seem to be paying off this time.
Back to the action, start of the fourth quarter at Occidental College. And at what point, Samantha, does the desperation start to sink in for the Riptide? They have to win this game or it's over for their season.
You have to wonder if we're not starting to see some of it already. The lead that LA has able to get in there, they've been able to maintain. Looking at this beautiful movement by the Aviators, you're really starting to wonder if Vancouver is just a little bit too loose. Clearly not dead yet, but beautiful, seemingly effortless point from the Aviators.
And another very nice forehand from Carnegie blew that point wide open. And once it was in Lissner's hands with Elbigan cutting for him, you knew that one was in the bag.
It's a done deal.
Biggest lead of the game now for the Aviators. They are up by 4, 18-14. The Riptide have got to show some urgency.
Yeah, it's really nice to see the Aviators coming together, the teamwork and cohesiveness and chemistry that we've been seeing from them this game is refreshing. It's something that Vancouver has been doing for the most part of this game, and it's really great to see the Aviators pulling it together as well.
Back on offense, Vancouver centers to Bellavance. And over the head of his receiver, bounced in and out, wind popping that one up in the air, and it's Ottinger now. Back to Corbett. Ooh, and nearly turfs the disc, but Steiner gets it. Ooh.
Beautiful fading cut from Dan Ottinger for a big upfield gainer.
Wow, and that is a nice upline cut from Hunter Corbett. He gets the disc from Zach Schachner with the lefty flick. Aviators starting to run away with it.
It's true. You saw Vancouver really starting to spread out on their defense and coming off the field with their heads down. You want to see them pick it up. You definitely want a fight all the way to the end of this game. I hope they're able to get that defensive and offensive fire back and not lose heart in this game. Continued fire from the Aviators on defense. Ballinger just running all over the field trying to make all of the plays.
The Aviators trailing the entire point, and Vancouver makes them pay for it.
Yeah.
So they are down by 4 now. It is 15 for Vancouver and 19 for the Aviators.
It's good to see that fight still from Vancouver. Aviators choosing to play, it looked a little bit more poachy on that last one. Dan Ballinger bouncing between handlers with a mark on. There must have been someone upfield covering out that deep space, really trying to take away the huck, but Vancouver proved that they're still able to move that disc upfield with the short gainers.
That's got to be really heartening for Vancouver to know that they can punch in an easy, quick score like that. They've had a lot of long, drawn-out, grinding points, and the fact that they're able to just get it into the end zone should give them some confidence as we close this game out.
They've had a number of those complete offensive possession points this game.
And Carnegie with the disc, pops it up to no one, and that's what the Riptide ordered up to get back in this game, but they give it right back.
Yep, that upline aggression can sometimes backfire.
Throws it behind the receiver, and that's Chang, who is going to go the other way. So another difficult situation for Chang in the corner. But now it's Carnegie in space. Throws the high release backhand. And it's Lai with the huck to the end zone.
Oh, what a catch from Eric Lissner. Defense thought he was going to be able to make that play, but snatched right out of the air.
I think they were both waiting for maybe a gust of wind, or they thought it was going to hang a little longer, but Lissner didn't have to jump, neither, and his defender didn't jump either, but he just ran right under that and snatched it.
That ring rust appears to have worn off at this point.
Boy, was I ever wrong with Lissner.
An almost huck attempt blocked by the Aviators, leading to a backward misthrow.
And that is a nice flip from Chiles to Corbett. So the Aviators extend their lead to 6 points with 9:14 left in the game.
Vancouver's really got to be amped to get a few more points on the board this game. 6 points in 9 minutes. It's not an unbreakable barrier, but it's starting to look a little tough for them.
Yeah, we've seen in the AUDL in these last several years, we've seen the scores coming fast and furious. So 6 points, while in a club game to 15 would be virtually insurmountable. You know, there's still plenty of time left in this one. A nice inside-out forehand that's going to sail right into the breadbasket of his receiver, Brett Anderson.
Once again, Vancouver sharing the love between teammates. Not all of the points going to one specific player. Many receivers getting the glory of the end zone.
And it's in points like that where you really see the potential of this Vancouver team. You can see how they were able to beat the Spiders and the Cascades. They have all the throws. They have all the disc skills.
They have all the pieces.
And their games have all been fairly close this year. Sometimes it's just a few breaks here and there that cause it to not go your way.
LA is all too familiar with that refrain.
Chang, Lai, and Alexander, a different handler set. Aviators mixing it up, using their entire depth.
I wonder if we'll see a big deep. Ooh, that was tight.
Right in the middle of a crowd, and another jump ball is going to land out of bounds, but he tries for the greatest. No, nobody home.
The greatest being when a player tries to preserve possession by throwing the disc before making contact with out of bounds. If you're able to catch the disc and release it before you touch the ground, you can in fact save that disc, though unlikely and difficult, hence the term greatest.
End zone, two back.
Wow, a very nice catch for the Riptide. That is a break, And Samantha, that's Mark Leduc bringing it within 4.
Yeah, and Nick Alexander was all over him, and he managed to stay focused on that disc and come down with it.
So don't change the website just yet. What was once 6 is now 4, and that only took about a minute and a half.
Some really incredible athleticism and determination showing from the Vancouver Riptide. The fight is very much alive.
8 minutes left is an eternity. The Aviators have got to buckle down and focus. They cannot give up any more breaks.
This side now, this side. This side, this side.
Kevin, keep pushing him out right now. Up, no hook, no.
We've got Silverman now, who is being put on the O-line to give them a bit of a spark. You know, sometimes they'll put him in when they feel like the cutters are not getting the job done.
Well, we know if there's anybody who's going to get that job done, it is Jeff Silverman.
No hook, no hook, no hook. Up.
And who else but Hunter Corbett? He is fired up. Zach Schachner with a very nice forehand. So a quick goal, and where is he going? Wow, the Little Scene long jump celebration.
If the opportunity presents itself, why not take advantage?
Although usually, Samantha, the long jump comes from the opposite direction and you run down the track, but you know.
Beggars can't be choosers.
What do I know? What do I know? Riptide moving the disc easily.
There's that Plinko movement we saw from them earlier this game that the Aviators were doing their best to shut down.
Get on the D, get on the D, get on the D.
So we get a chance to see Carlisle and now Balmer.
Carlisle with so much space around him. He's someone who's really able to just make himself that space.
So Balmer with the buttery backhand to Theodore for the 6-goal advantage. It's 23-17.
It looked initially like Theodore was going to have to really play catch up and lay out to catch that disc, but between the wind and his own speed, able to just run that down and calm, casual catch in the end zone.
And Samantha, as we saw earlier in the game with Carnegie, they're giving Balmer 10 yards of space underneath. Now, that strategy is good because he's 6'7", but Balmer is a heck of a thrower in his own right.
He hasn't shown it as much in this game to this point. And I guess Vancouver were really starting to try to overplay his deep threat. And he just proved why that's not a great idea.
If you're going to give him the under, you've got to set a tough mark. Looks off the huck.
Beautiful space in the handlers in Vancouver. They do such a great job of not being afraid to go backward.
And that might have been the smoothest point that we've seen from them all game. That's Miles Sinclair.
Tough defense from the Aviators on the upfield. Maybe closer marks and less space for the handlers on the backfield might have helped out on the defense to prevent that goal. But Vancouver took advantage and put it in.
So with 6 minutes left in the game, Samantha, and a 5-point deficit, what do the Riptide have to do to get back in this game?
Vancouver has had some incredible disc movement, very smooth, very quick throughout this game. They really need to amp up their defense to get the turnover immediately off the pole so that the field stays nice and short and they can keep working their magic in the end zone.
Aviators back on offense, and it's Chang working with Schachner. Throw and go to Chang. Chang with the forehand huck. It's going to be Carnegie. Oh, and a collision between Carnegie and his defender leaves them both staggered. A brilliant attempt from Carnegie. He's walking off gingerly. That's Derek Fenton who got the big body. He's working his shoulder. Thankfully, both of them able to walk off on their own power. That huck not having enough air on it, making for a dangerous play.
Husayn being replaced by Dan Ottinger, really a great choice of player to put in if you have the opportunity this close to the end zone.
And of course, a foul was called by the referee. Looks like Fenton got too much of the body of Carnegie and landed on him, forced him to drop that disc. And up line in a beautiful layout D. That's Ryan Lee with the timely block.
That is unfortunate. That's not what you want on that end zone line. You really want to be able to have that patience and control to not take that first look necessarily.
And double team gets broken through. That's Anderson. Looks like a foul will be called on the mark, so he'll get to march the disc up.
Lie with a little extra body contact on that one.
The shoulder shimmy and the inside break. To Tejpar. Tejpar can't get it off, but now gets the forehand up the field. Riptide using the break side nicely, but a hand block is going to send it the other way for the Aviators.
Not what Vancouver wants to see at this point, with 4.5 minutes left in the game.
The flick bomb from Shackner gets it to Lissner, and he is going to throw the goal to Elbogen. Lissner with a spectacular layout.
What a great catch. That's incredibly exciting for the Aviators. At this point, the point differential is so important for the Aviators. Looking at the playoff spots to come, they may need all of the point diff they can get.
And you hate to say it, but you start playing the what-if game. Lissner being gone for 6 weeks, you look at the impact that he's had on this game. You start to look at some of the earlier matchups on the Aviators' schedule. They lose by 1 point, 3 points. Nice around break for Norris. A little flip.
And Vancouver continuing to default to playing on that sideline.
Beautiful air bounce backhand and another flip for the goal. We've seen a lot of those air bounce backhands from the Riptide going in that direction. What does that do for throwing in the wind?
Traditionally, that is not a throw you want to cultivate, especially in the wind, having that bounce. If a gust of wind comes at the wrong time, that disc is dropping straight into the ground. But for them, it's working. It's able to get out from under the hands of the Aviator marks, leading to all those breaks that we've seen.
Puck goes up.
What?
And who else?
What?
Lissner reads the disc perfectly, baits his defender to go up early and comes down with a clap catch.
I mean, and you can see the joy on his face that he's able to come back from his injury. It's just got to feel amazing to be able to have this much impact on the game.
Just like a golden retriever running around Runyon Canyon. He's just happy to be there.
From the relaxed postures of his teammates around him, clearly everybody is just relieved to have him back in play.
So the good times are flowing here at Patterson Field. 3 minutes left as the Aviators are up by 6. Not too much time left to make a stirring comeback, but Vancouver's going to give it their best shot. Wants to throw the hammer.
A great catch under pressure.
That's Carlisle. Norris. Good mark by Theodore. Gets off the high release backhand anyway, and that's Underhill without breaking stride with the backhand to Mark Leduc.
It's really remarkable to see the crisp cuts and crisp throws that Vancouver has been able to string together. When their offense is flowing, it's just magical. It's just really beautiful to watch. It's, the game played at its finest.
2:38 left in the game, and the Riptide will need a quick break to have any chance left.
The wind clearly still a factor in this game. You can see the players' jerseys whipping around in that breeze.
Elbogen in the center gets it to Chang with what seemed like his millionth upline cut of the game.
Grant Boyd appears to be completely unmarked. Be really great to get the disc to him.
Lie with the forehand to Elbogen. That's going to get it done. As Samantha, being a Canadian expat yourself, you're familiar with the rabid devotion of your countrymen to all things disc.
I'm from a city where we have actually among the biggest summer leagues in the world, counting about 5,000 players from a city of 1 million people. With only so many summer months in the year, you really work hard during those seasons to get as much disc time as possible.
Yeah, this year we added the Ottawa squad to the AUDL, in addition to the Montreal Royale and the Toronto Rush, of course, former champions.
Oh, great defensive play from LA, but it looks okay. Everybody's getting up there. Everybody's fine.
Clock winding down on this one as the Aviators are going to put this in the bag. It's Chiles.
Yeah, I'm sure there's the temptation of sort of playing keep away, but there's the temptation to just play keep away in order to maintain the lead, but with point differential coming into play in the potential postseason, you really got to keep scoring, which LA is clearly keen to do.
Vancouver playing for nothing but pride now as they drop the disc on the sideline. Their season not over in a literal sense, but technically they will be eliminated from playoff contention this evening, but still with a few more games left on the schedule to play spoiler.
You can really start to see the fatigue at this point setting in on both teams with 3 unfortunate drops in a row and then this missed throw here. A number of players taking a knee on the field.
So a timeout called, and you can see we've got 2 Aviators and 1 member of the Riptide that are positively gasping for breath. This has been a slog, to say the least.
Yeah, and with the hot air and the bright sun, with very little relief from the turf field.
This side! Middle! This side! No round!
Then that's going to get it done. As time runs out, it is Carnegie with the nail in the coffin. So with that 27-20 victory by the Aviators, they now pulled a 4-7 and are still technically alive in the playoff hunt for the 3rd spot out west. Samantha, we saw a very tight game early that the Aviators were able to pull away gradually in the end. How big of a win was this for them?
Both for their playoff hopes and for team morale. This was a huge win for them, especially to see some of the players who have been injured coming back, Stefan Carlisle, as well as Eric Lissner. Really great to have them back on the field. You can see how much impact these players have on the game.
And we can also report that the San Francisco Flamethrowers have beaten the Seattle Cascades in overtime 25-23, which puts both teams at 6-5 in 3rd place, that much further out of reach. So the Aviators still with some work to do.
It's not impossible to overcome. They've got 3 more games. If they can nail all 3 of these, that will put them in really solid contention for that final spot. It's going to continue to be an exciting season for all of the teams in this division.
Well, that'll do it here from Patterson Field at Occidental College. Aviators pulling out the impressive 27-20 victory. I'm Jeremy Ziskin. For Samantha Pittman and myself, we'll see you next time.